everyone. Today on Creating Life Consciously, I am thrilled to be speaking with Christine Farr. Christine is South African who has lived, worked, and traveled around the world. With a Bachelor of Psychology, an ICF accredited life coach, and health coach certificates, you can find Christine laughing with friends and clients and sipping a mug of something warm and soothing. When she's not researching something or curating her range of wellness products, her love of nature will take her exploring or daydreaming about the shapes and clouds with her faithful feline companions. Navigating years of silence as a teenager, a terrible tragedy launched Christine out of silence and onto a stage at age 15 to honor the life her mother had lost. This journey of self-discovery became an act of self-love as endometriosis and co-morbid conditions almost ended it all. Christine refused to accept her prognosis and chose to fight as hard as she could to become the version of her she knew she was capable of. She found resilience, her guides, and the healing of a holistic life approach, and she invites you to share some moments with her as together you plan your path into your better, me-empowered life. Amazing. There's so much goodies there that we can dive into. Goodness. Let's kind of go way back for a little minute. And what was that experience like for you when you lost your mother?
It's this really ties in, Carmel, to creating life consciously, and the understanding of the awakening process that occurs throughout your life if you're curious, if you're open, if you're let it. My mother was going in for a surgery. She'd had many. This was slightly different. It was abdominal, not spinal. And she was very excited for the possibility of the life she was living to continue. She thought that this was her path to health after many years of, endless surgeries. In January, we found out she was going in, and the minute she told me, I broke down in tears. I was overwhelmed with the feeling of loss and sadness, but unable to put a finger on it because my aunt had had the same surgery. She was fine, and so my mother was looking at me like, why are you being hysterical? But as the days turned into weeks, she went from one hospital to the next, as her health deteriorated, as this very routine surgery became more than just routine. And I found myself praying and saying, just not my birthday. Just please not my birthday, because my birthday is March 13th, so it's coming up. This year, actually, as we're talking about it, I was 15, I'm turning 45, so it's a very special month, a very special day, a very special year. And understanding that she was going to go no matter what I did, no matter how much I asked. She had a stroke right before she died on my birthday. And it was terrible having to go to school, having people stare at me, which they'd done most of my life up to that point because we were in a small town where everybody knows your business. And when you grow up in a family where there's illness, especially when you're growing up in a small church, people know who you are and they know what you're going through. They think they do. When I lost her, when I saw that she was gone and I understood that she was gone, it was a real moment of like, okay, God, however you are, whoever you are, source, whatever it was that made me. So much emotion, anger, fear, bargaining, of course, that grief moment of, but it's, I was supposed to die on my birthday. You saved me. I was born with the umbilical cord around my neck. I was born blue. And so I'm like, why did you take her? This was my birthday. I was supposed to go, not her. And all of these at age 15, seeing the love of the community surrounding us, that on my birthday, on the day she was lost, everybody gathered and supported so that we knew no matter what was happening in that moment, we were okay. We were going to be okay. And that's exactly what did happen. We have been okay in our own ways. And I feel that she is always with me. And that's a different story as well. But in that moment, all of those overwhelming emotions, and that's when I asked the big ask. She's gone. I'm silent. Just give me a big, open life. I want a great big life, God. She's gone. And you get what you ask for, especially when you are overwhelmed with a lot of emotion, which is energy. Now I know.
Yeah.
Now I understand. But it was very energetic. But because I was tapped into spirit and because I'd been asking and I'd been kind of consciously trying to create something different, I was like, all right, you've got to learn how to work with this. And that has been, I believe, what's opened up my life to all of these adventures.
Amazing. Wow. Let's talk about the silence a little bit. You said you were silent. What does that mean, or how can you share what that means to you?
What it means to me is going from a very happy, carefree, bubbly, independent child who wasn't afraid to speak with people, who was always curious, asking questions. I get teased about that still at home sometimes. You know, you were the child who asked why about everything, never accepted answers, wanted to know more. And at the age of 10, I went from a co-ed school to a single-sex school. We were all female. And that was also when I became a woman, if we're going to be euphemistic about it, when everything started to change in my body. Was also, now that we have the words ADHD and autism, I am on the spectrum. And my teacher at the time didn't understand that the dreamy girl looking out the window knew the answers. So I was picked on at the same time that my mother was far away in hospital for months. And it was a scary time. My grandfather had passed away. My grandmother was living with us, so there was grief. And so I thought to myself, well, there doesn't seem to be much going for me here, so I'm just going to be quiet because it doesn't matter what I say, things aren't going well. And I became more and more silent because when I did speak or when I did interact in some way, it didn't work for home life. Be a good girl and mom's going to come home. You know, those kind of ideas were put in my head. And the teacher didn't like that I was different. Wasn't really able to do much about it because I was from the family that everybody loved and cared about. But it's still, I felt it deeply. And so over the years, an incredibly debilitating stutter came up. I can still feel it as I'm tapping into it. It's coming up. So I've got to breathe through this. And I could barely even say my name. So there was silence. Mm-hmm. There was silence, but I love that this came up because often when we can't have our voice, there are those who want to give us voice. And there are those who are using their voices and can encourage us to step into our own. And that was it for me, Carmel. It was saying my name. And that's difficult to hear. That's uncomfortable to listen to. And I felt that as an empathic person. And so I felt the discomfort when I spoke as well as theirs. And it just kept me deeper and deeper and deeper.
Wow. I think, and I can relate somewhat. I spent a lot of my youth and growing up years being very quiet for different reasons. It was largely because I wasn't really encouraged to speak, particularly from my mother. I kind of just learned to always keep my head down and my mouth shut because I never knew that if I did open my mouth and say something, I didn't know if a shoe would come flying or, verbal abuse or what it was. And so I learned at a very young age to just sit and watch. And also being a very empathic kid, it was very confusing for me because I could see that when people were making up stories or when they were lying outright, which is how I referred to it at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be, what's happening here? Like, I don't understand. We're little, we're supposed to trust these adults. And, you know, I mean, we learn how to distrust at such a young age for many, many reasons. And so I've always been very, very quiet until you put a mic in my hand. That's a different story. And it bothered me. It bothered me that I didn't feel like I had a voice. And since then, in the past, you know, decade, since this new way of being has opened up for me, I now look at that experience as one of my greatest gifts.
Absolutely.
Because it put me into a place of being the observer and the witness very early on.
That resonates.
Right, which now really, really helps me a lot in my work. The hardest part for me early on was getting over the judgment aspect of it.
Ooh,
and
yes.
witnessing those times, because we all have shit. We all have stories. We've all lied. We've all made up things. And so for me, the hardest part was getting over and just be able to be there and hold it without the judgment, and just accepting whatever was coming to me, whoever was in front of me, when I knew that they were making up a story, to just hold it without judgment.
Yes.
And from a place of love, no matter what. That was tough for me in the beginning. It was definitely tough for me in the beginning. But that silence, you know, stillness and silence is really pure and absolute sound. Because when you can get into that stillness and that silence, you can hear everything.
You can hear the universe, and this is not making things up. People, when I say things like that, they look at me and I'm like, it takes work. It takes work, and it takes faith, not belief. It's faith, because belief can lead you astray. But faith that has come up for me over and over in so many ways, and kind of really ties into why I am the way I am. As you spoke about, you know, the not knowing what to say. It was the same with my mother, having the relationship that was broken by months of her not being home. And when she was home, she wasn't always well. She was in pain. And so the interaction wasn't a normal mother-daughter relationship. I would be who I was, and sometimes I'd get a smack through the face because I'd say a word or a phrase I'd heard, but hadn't, you know, had anyone regulating my path as I was growing. And so sometimes what I would say would be good and rewarded, and sometimes how I behaved would be punished in a harsh way, where I'm like, but you said, wait, you were using, hold on, wait, what? Stop hitting me. What's going on? And it was an understanding that now I understand that how I was feeling the same way, being the observer from an early age, being able to rescue a bee without worrying about being stung while all the adults are screaming at me and I'm going, what? It's fine. The same thing, listening to them. I would apparently get quite argumentative with all of the adults and tell them that they're all lying and scared and that they really need to grow up because I could see and feel clearly what was happening, understanding that I was safe in doing certain things, but also trusting myself, diving into books when I couldn't speak, that silence, that stillness. I still had the curiosity. And so I went seeking, and I found the library, and I found books, and I found ways of being that weren't mine. So even though I didn't feel my voice mattered, I tried to find voices that did. And in each of those, I found a bit of myself, at least a part that I knew I wanted to be or become more of.
Amazing.
Yeah.
There's so much there. And then, you know, coming out of that, you know, and for me, and eventually finding my voice and not being afraid to use it. For you, with the addition of a stutter, I mean, I was picked on for other reasons.
Yes.
It is what it is. It was what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you kind of broke through
Yes.
that silence, and, what was that moment, that first moment for you like? Because you said it was in to honor your mother's life.
Correct. So that was work. That took work. When I was growing up, I was different. I was different to everybody around me, but I was always very intelligent, very in tune, but very tapped out. I would blink a lot and I would bite my nails, and the stutter came along. So it was always a way to help Christine cope with the issue, but also to try and get it to stop. And one of the ways was a speech and drama class. And so Mrs. Sheila Roper, who to this day, I bless her almost every day, took me under her wing for speech and drama class while my mother was in and out of hospital. And so I had a strong female figure who was creative. And I became a tree. I didn't have to say anything, but I could root myself and become a tree and stand still and move around. And it was, now I understand, a beautiful way of bringing me back into my body. And when my mother died on my birthday, it was after watching Dead Poets Society with our late Robin Williams, who was also just such a beautiful creative soul. And I thought, what the heck, she doesn't have a voice. My voice is lost, but I can still speak. So what can I do in a big way, because I'm asking for a great big life? And the way to live with faith is to take those faithful action steps. You might not work, it might not work, but at least you're doing something. And so we have something called interhouse plays in South Africa. It's very much like if you watched like J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter series, they have the houses, so do we. Ours was Elizabeth, Eleanor, and Elton, and I was Elizabeth House. And so at the age of 15, I thought, well, let's go into the interhouse plays, because it wasn't my voice. It was someone else's words, but it was a chance to say, okay, I'm asking you for something huge. I have to show myself that I can do this with your help. And when I took the first step on that stage and it didn't die and the world didn't end and the stage didn't collapse, I took the second step and I was shaking and I could feel everybody watching me because they knew I didn't speak. And I could feel the disbelief and I could feel the grief and I could feel my mother next to me cheering me on. And I took that third step and I could see it. And I was like, okay, sweating, like, that moment of pure beingness, if I can say that, where you're so energetically being that you're feeling everything. I cannot put a single emotional feeling to it because it is overwhelming, but I had control over the overwhelm. So I want to say my meekest moment was also that moment of stepping in with all of my power, going, we're doing this. We're doing this. There's no example for this, but we're doing it. And I got the script and I faced the people and I blurred them out and I spoke to my mom. And I got the part. And each year after that, I got the part. And when I was in my final year, I was play director and I was house captain. And we won everything that year. I wasn't a sporty person, but I showed up. And I showed up consistently. And I encouraged everybody who was on my team to show up with me. It was never, I'm the boss and we're doing it this way. It's more like, this is how I see we'd like to go. What is your input? Where would you like to help? Let's go. And it opened up my
Amazing.
world. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked a little bit about, before we pushed the record button, about just showing up.
That's
right?
it.
I mean, I don't have 10 questions that I have prepared to ask you that you know about. We're just showing up. We're showing up, we're having an honest conversation, and we're going to see where it goes. And that's okay. We are creating moment to moment to moment. And it takes courage. Sometimes it takes a lot of bloody courage. It really does to see the fear, to feel it. I know a lot of people talk about, facing their fear.
Mm-hmm.
I now prefer to kind of look at that as noticing it, that it's there. And instead of facing it, because facing it to me is a little confrontational.
Yes.
And so instead of doing that, what I do is that when I feel or sense that fear or see it, whatever you want to call it, is I'm like, okay, I acknowledge that you're here.
Mm-hmm.
Come here.
Yes.
Come here. You're a part of me. You're not separate. Come here. We'll do this in wholeness together.
Yes.
And we're going to do it anyway. And whatever happens, happens.
Yes.
And it's those moments that have so much power, because you realize that when you do that no, I didn't die. The sky didn't fall. Still here. And that becomes the motivation and momentum to have the courage to do the next thing whenever that fear comes back. And it does.
Yes.
Right? It does. It always does. I'm not going to sit here and lie to anybody and say that I don't experience fear, because I do. Right? Of course I do. But being able to harness that and bring it here and go and do it anywhere. And this is, I think, for me, is a sweet spot of being able to create, and to create consciously, instead of falling into the subconscious habits and patterns of the old fear, where the old fear would have just, I'm just going to go run and hide, and I'm not going to even try.
That's something that I've understood as I've dived into this journey of discovery of my own why. Of, look, I've gone around the world and done everything differently, and yet I ended up in a situation that was worse than my mother's. I've had more surgeries than she's had. I've been in a lot more dangerous situations than she ever was in. But it was facing that confrontationally and seeing it didn't work, doing everything that we're supposed to do, and everything still fell apart. And I just said, well, heck, now what? And that stillness inside with me said, just be, just sit, just be, and observe. Be who you are. Stop being who everybody wants you to be. Stop being what the internet is telling you. Stop chasing. Stop doing all these things, because it's clearly not working. If it was, you wouldn't be here. And it was no judgment, because the judgment does come. But this is what I found, Carmel. When you sit with it, when you hold space, when all of those emotions, and I love how Thich Nhat Hanh said, call it the baby. And I do. I'm like, all right, fear baby, come on here, because where I'm from, that whole country, a system was created by fear, not fact, created by fear. And there were lives lost and are still being lost to fear. When it's never, ever anything else that we're trying to harm, it's the fear. We don't like that feeling. Think of how many people harm themselves, not because of what's happening, but because of the feeling of the fear. And there are very few examples out there showing us what it is to actually navigate this in the moment, to work through it, that it does take time, that it is going to come back. Because the truth is, it didn't start with you. Just like Dr. Bessel van der Kolk said, the body keeps the score. As you learn about endometriosis, you learn that you were a genetic possibility in your grandmother when she was pregnant with your mother. So you know what? Whatever was happening to her, you are still processing through your body. And it's these ways of healing as you dive into different modalities that work for you, as you find the teachers that work for you. I mean, I sing a mantra every day. And it's simply because it feels so natural in my body. And sometimes when it doesn't work, when they're distant, it's not resonating for me, the ones that I'm choosing, the ones that I love, I will go and I'll just put some on and I'll just listen and I'll ask Spirit consciously, look, today I'm feeling tapped out. I've missed the bus somewhere. I haven't given myself love. I haven't been able to hold space. Something's dropped. I need you to show me. And I'll find something that resonates. If it's a story, if it's a word, if it's a person, usually it's a mantra. And I'll look at what the meaning is as I've released and I'm crying, going, oh, that was it. Like squeezing that pressure out, right? Releasing the tears. Because I know it didn't start with me. And I know that there's a lot that I'm working with. Just as I was gifted this physical appearance by my family, so have I been gifted what I don't know. But I am responsible for healing it because I choose to. Because I know how good it feels to let it go.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And interesting that you touched on this because, you're also familiar with Sadhguru.
Yes.
And so we can take a look at this. It's a heap of memory, and it goes beyond this particular embodiment and lifetime.
Yes.
Native American cultures will say that it's 7 generations, but it's actually 12 generations of ancestors that are still trying to live through you, which is not necessarily, from my point of view, a really good thing, because I want to live this life. I don't want to have those other influences. I honor, I bless, I love them for the foundation that they have laid for us in civilization. We're not having this conversation on the internet without some genius at some point inventing some things along the way that have made this capable for us to connect this way. So I very much honor that. But I want this life to be mine. I don't want the other 12 generations of it, whether it be genetic. And, you know, the other interesting thing is that the source of creation from the very first amoeba is accessible here, but it doesn't have to influence or impact things in a way that is becomes subconscious. And because the subconscious is very much reactionary, it's based on habit, pattern, and tendencies. So for me, it's about noticing those habits and patterns and tendencies, and some days going, oh my God, there's my mother. Oh shit. Oh shit. I said this was never going to happen, but there she is. And I was like, okay. But when you can become aware of it, then you can do things to start shifting that behavior so that it works for you rather than against you.
This is the key. And this is the fun part, because when you are dealing with chronic illness, whether it's of the body or of the mind, because the brain registers pain in the same way, it's a spider's web. There are layers. It gets sticky. But that teaches you to balance a multifold of being, multifold ways. That also helps you on this path of healing, because I love thinking and talking about past lives. I love diving into my recurring dreams and going, that battle, I remember it. We're now finding digs that are kind of showing that this happened. And I'm going, okay, so you are not in me now, but I know that when I need to have a moment where the meek me has to have that powerful embodiment of this is my ground, this is my boundary, this is my line. I do not care how aggressive you being in my face. This is my stand. I can tap on that. When I had acupuncture for my endometriosis, and I was very spiritual about it, and I brought a mantra in for healing through the acupuncture, and I went through a bunch of faces of different colors and backgrounds, and I was like, okay, here we go, boom, 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 and then there was one really hairy, kind of bony face with my eyes looking at me, just as surprised to see me as I was surprised to see her, and I'm like, okay, this is where we are. Diving into Professor Emoto talking about emotion water, as they're now learning about the whorls and the shapes of your fingers. Was it leukemia? People with leukemia, blood cancers, quite often have the same spirals. And I'm going, well, this is the force that created you. There's progression, there's regression, there's so many different ways, but you're right, I am here right now. So this is my magic key for that. Think of your video games, think of your gamer, okay? If I can explain to anybody how I navigate all of these influences in this life, I tap into gaming, and I'm not a gamer, but I've watched many of them. In this life, I had at my fingertips every console I've ever played with, every character I have ever been, every single thing I've mined, every single lesson I've learned. I have the ability to tap into that. And that is enormous and overwhelming. And just like you put a toddler in a place, it's going to cause chaos. So, okay, I know I'm working with that. That energy is available to me. I have pulled at it. I have made myself crazy. We're not going there. Okay. So I have to be very clear what works, what doesn't. That helps me when I go into my healing, when I try different modalities in my physical body, because this is how I learn to work with this physical reality as I'm experiencing it right now, because there's a lesson here. As a habit coach, I know habits make up 98% of the way I am. And I'm going, oh, there's a dirty, stinky habit coming up. But because there's no judgment, and because I work with the voice of judgment, and I'm going, you're a clue. You're a clue to who gave me this, what I need to let go, and maybe what my family's been carrying for too long. So there's no judgment for them either. There's love and compassion. But it is knowing I can at any time access what it is that I need. But do I need it, and am I clear? because I get what I ask for. I have seen this in my life. So what am I asking for? And how do you get
Right,
there?
exactly.
Yes.
And being clear on that, right?
Mm.
Because sometimes you have to go past the self of habit patterns and tendencies and go, okay, am
Yes.
I still looking at the same thing as I was a few years ago or however long ago it was? And am I still chasing that? And if it's not here,
Mhm.
then what the hell am I doing?
Yes.
Right? Does that
Yes.
also, where does the habit pattern and tendency of that? It takes an acute sense of awareness
Awareness.
to
Mhm.
be, it's like, okay, sometimes you just sit and you carve out the time to just sit, close your eyes and reflect on, okay, what have I been doing? Have I been
Mhm.
trying to force a square peg through a round hole?
Mhm.
And now it's time to move on and say, okay, that didn't work. It's okay. It's
Mhm.
okay. And then just kind of rejigging things, even sometimes just a little bit,
Mhm.
can manifest in like minutes.
That's it. And it is.
Like
It's
it's
that
crazy. I'm
it
sorry.
goes.
I'm laughing. I'm laughing because, as I told Christine at the beginning of this, my landlady outside of my front door is having her granddaughter's first birthday today. And I asked them if they could, because it's not starting till 2, because we were doing this. And so I don't know if you can hear the twinkle, twinkle little star music that's going on out here. And I'm sitting here laughing because it just started a few minutes ago. And I'm like, it's okay. It's a good backdrop to the podcast. Whereas before, like 10, 12 years ago, I'd be sitting here losing my shit.
Yes.
I'd be so pissed off. I'd be seething inside rather than sitting here laughing and going, it's a birthday party. What are you going to do? Pause, run out, say, turn it off. No, come on, right?
This is it, but this is the joy. This is the joy that is available to you in your healing journey. And here I'm going to say a very good word, if or phrase, if you let it. If you let it, because I encounter a lot of people when I'm doing my strategy sessions, because it's 15 minutes. We're just going to chat. And it's listening to what they have to say, how they speak about themselves. I can work with you or no way. Because there are some people who are going to rigidly stick to the way that they have been raised and rigidly stick to the way that they're being right now, never realizing that that's your clue to the most vibrant life that you have possible and available to you. And it's simply because the ways that we are being are so unconscious that it does take that act of self awareness. But here's what I love about it. When you start on a spiritual journey, and this is what I loved about Sadhguru and meeting him at one of the hardest, darkest parts of my life, I wanted to yell at him. You're saying what I know. People called me evil for this. My whole life I have kept my mouth shut, and here you are telling the world what I believe. And then I thought, hold on, whoa, hold on. Okay, good. We're seeing this real depth and strength of emotion we're dealing with. Okay, hold on. Started to ask what he thought about endometriosis. Did not like what I heard. Sat with that resistance, and I thought, okay, resistance training is how you get stronger. Resistance is how we have electricity. Okay, hold on. Okay, sit back. Remember the lesson you learned as a child that fascinates you to this day. Our eyes see everything upside down. Our brain flips it. Ah, so everything you
I
were
know.
told is a weakness about you could actually be a strength. Hold on. Stop saying no, it's not, and start saying, how is this my strength? How is
Mm.
me being too sensitive actually my powerhouse? How is me being so emotional the way forward? How is me being this tenacious researcher going to help me and not keep me spiraling?
Mm.
How? How is my uniqueness and my differentness going to be what opens the path, not just for me, but everybody I encounter? Because here's the truth, Carmel. When you sit back and you observe who you are, the beingness of you, there's never just one purpose. There's never just one layer. Just as we're physical, emotional, energetic, spiritual, all of it, there are multifold purposes that in each moment, and this is why I love that we throw out a script because I'm feeling the flow. In each moment, in each minute, in each day, there is a purpose available to you. And if you think it's just one great big thing, you're sabotaging yourself. Part of my purpose wherever I go is transmuting negative energy and helping people feel better. That's it. Just showing up. There's no talent.
100%.
That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
What's needed in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Not who is this personality or identity that I've created and how would she show up?
Yes.
Because I've, loosening the bonds of attachment to being what Carmel used to be isn't going to work in this iteration of
No.
whatever I'm going to do. It's just not.
Yes.
Right. And being able then, because as a child and being as empathic, intuitive, psychic as I was, I had no one to talk to about it. I had no understanding of what was going on. But aside from a few experiences, I didn't have any fear of it.
Yes.
Right. And so now that, what I thought was a weakness because I was just overwhelmed. It was, I'm so sensitive. No, what it is that embrace the receptivity. You're receiving. Right? There's things that you can do. I mean, I couldn't used to be able to go into crowds or big places, or if I was going to go to the mall or a concert, I would have to kind of just really prepare myself and get over it. Now, and I don't want to refer to this as boundaries, but this energy is so strong right now that doesn't come and have the overwhelm. So there are things that we can do as sensitive people is just, I would say, just don't say you're sensitive. Just saying you are receptive. You are receiving information, clues, wisdom from the universe, and you can get to a place of being able to hold it.
It's a habit.
Just hold it.
It's a habit, though. Listen to how we speak about it. Because I've worked with someone who's an energy worker here, and she doesn't like going into supermarkets because then I said, what is your habit? You're preparing yourself. You're protecting yourself. You are an energy worker. You are connected to source. So let's talk about obsidian for that beautiful stone. And this is something I do in my life. I love how I feel when I'm tapped into certain crystals. I cannot always take them with me. I know that we are made of the same source energy. So what I do is I sit with the feeling of it. I sit with the energy. I meditate or just be with it. And I have it in my mind so that moments when I need protection, when I feel surprised, I become obsidian in my mind. And I tap into the grounding and I ground myself. I also remind myself that as a being of energy and as someone who's conscious of my energy, the way I speak about it creates my world. So I say, I'm going into this place where there's going to be a bunch of different people and different energies and different needs, and there will be vampires because we know that this is the case. I'm not going to fight it. It's a fact. I get to go in there as an empowered person, knowing who I am. I get to take my light. I get to be a mirror for these people in a situation because that's exactly what it is. They're mirroring themselves and their perception of me. It's themselves, really. If I'm going into a place where there's different energies, like a supermarket, where there is that dense energy from certain plants and certain produce, I get to be a light and push this darkness, this denseness away a little bit. I get to bring this. Now, if it gets to be in my system, well, then I get to step into my daily practice because it is a beautiful understanding of what I'm letting go. And that's part of my ego.
Absolutely.
It's that going, I'm not powerless at all. I'm actually so powerful. It scares me. I get to work with that too.
You get to work with that too. I want to touch on something that you mentioned because I'm going to be a little bit
please do. Please disagree. Please do, because this is how we learn.
It's not about disagreeing, I don't think. I think that, because I know that a lot of people will talk about vampires and energy vampires. And I do know, because belief isn't knowing. I know from my own experience that for the large part, that most of the people that I used to perceive as those energy vampires were just being them. It was my issue.
Oh, I like that.
It was my perceptive lens. And see, I don't feel, or from my experience since, look at others being able to steal my energy. I have to give it. I have to either leak it or I have to give it. Now, I do know that there are some out there that know what they're doing, know how to work with energy that can do that.
Yes.
But I don't think it's a broad stroke statement. I think that most of the people that we or others out there may view as energy vampires are not. That it's us leaking that and we're allowing that. It's like no one can give you happiness and no one can take it away.
Could I say, and this is something that as you're speaking, I'm processing, that they are more magnetized to attract to them certain things, just as we are magnetized to attract to us. Like I attract wounded people because in my family, in that story, we're all wounded and we stay wounded, and in our woundedness is how we get help. Like no, no, I'm so sorry. But I have noticed
Absolutely.
that I magnetize. Could I say it this way?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Right. But then how that affects your energy, I believe, is our responsibility. It's no
Yes.
one else's.
Yes.
So this would bring us almost to like the Ho'oponopono, is that whatever situation is coming to you, it's also yours to what we would call clean or cleanse. And it's coming to you for a reason, whether you're consciously aware from it, from this embodiment or lifetime, or from sometimes else. And so get rid of the judgment. And it's in the back of your mind. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. I love you.
Yes.
Because then you're not going to be leaking. You know, it might cause a trigger or something in the beginning, but if you go to that and you start working with the tools that, you know, we have learned along the way and how to work with that energy for the highest good and well-being of all, not just me, not just this one.
And I love that you brought up Ho'oponopono, because that is when I met Sadhguru at that time. It was after my 5th surgery. I was recovering in 2020 by myself. Nobody was around me, and it was very, very tough. And I had the Ho'oponopono prayer on YouTube on repeat for an hour every morning and an hour every evening, as I had my right hand on my heart space. I had my left hand on my abdomen where there was so much surgery and pain. And I just let it roll, and I just let everything. And there was moments of resistance, like stop listening to this. And I just breathe through it. And then in the next minute, release and release and release. And I kept going back to my family and back to the women in my line on both sides, because I'm tenacious and I research and I ask those questions because of the silent generation. And I found out the traumas that they had experienced and the abuse that they had experienced, and going on and on. And so each time it's the same thing over and over. And what I found in doing that, in opening up and releasing and saying, I want to know what it is that I'm working with. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for making me as I am now, that I'm consciously creating a healed version of me. Who are you? In meditation, the stories that come up, the feelings, the support, the love. Carmel, we're always loved and protected, and we're never alone.
No, absolutely. It's brilliant. If you can, we all talk about being triggered by other people and they said this, they did that. Those are opportunities for us as well. They're opportunities for all. We have to flip the perception, the belief around it, and understand that this is an opportunity. Whatever is coming is an opportunity, not only for myself, but for me to share also what I can bring. In my work, sometimes I've got to be very, very blunt. I don't candy coat things and I don't sugarcoat things all the time. Sometimes I'm incredibly blunt where I feel it's necessary and needed, and with the person who I feel can handle it. Right. Even in working with ayahuasca, as a shaman who works with ayahuasca, in the space, in the container, there's a lot of things show up. And if I am not focused on what I am there to do for the other person and call in the other spirits and the medicine of ayahuasca to help, it goes sideways in a hurry.
Yes.
and the potential for it to go sideways in a hurry. And so there's this focus and opportunity that we can bring to the table for the well-being of all. Every single thing that we do, whether or not, you might be working with one person, her name XYZ, but the work isn't just for her. That ripple effect, it's for all. It's for all. That healing, that wisdom, that knowledge, that clarity is for all.
It is, because it benefits everybody when you face who you are with love and acceptance, and you say, look, it wasn't my fault, but it is my responsibility to release this. Mm-hmm. People that I talk with, I have friends around the world, they're so angry at what's happening, and we want to go fix it. And I'm like, okay, but take it to the mirror. Take it to the mirror, because I had terrible road rage growing up, horrific road rage. I still, yes, the sweetest little girl, you get it behind a car, and I'm like, okay, let's go, especially if it's a big one, let's go. I'm so assertive that it becomes aggression. And I realize it's because I'm anonymous. It's because I'm not a good little girl. I'm not a female. It's a vehicle. And I'm like, okay, that aggression is clue that there's been too much passivity, or you've been trying to be kept passive. Let's work with that for a minute. Let's not take the aggression. Let's go, okay, we're showing up. This is good. I'm going to take a minute to breathe through this. And now I'm going to say, I'm stuck in traffic, but I get to listen to my favorite song again, or I get to sing to the top of my lungs, and I can move this energy out. But it really is that moment of, what am I working with? How do I make this work for me rather than against me? Because when I contain my nasty, it doesn't have a chance to get out in the world and create a cascade effect that's going to be someone else's. Because the truth that I have found out, especially with endometriosis, when people don't believe you, they don't believe you when you get called names that are horrific. It's their perception. It's their reaction of what your life is. And if I'm triggering someone, I used to react. Now I respond. I hold space for them to pour in whatever it is that's not mine. Okay, you pour there. This is my boundary. And you're giving me a clue as to what you're experiencing. And I have this moment to do something with, or just hold space. Literally just hold space for you to dump all the vitriol into this basket. Then I'm then going to say to Source, thank you so much. Put this away, because I'm safe and I'm a safe space. And if you're going to give it to someone, give it to me. But I'm going to challenge you, and I'm going to encourage you, and send you off with love. Don't do that again. Let's find a way to manage this better. That's how we change the world. Taking it to the mirror and going,
100%, because it's like, okay, what is here right now? How can I work with this to create what I want in my reality consciously and lovingly?
Yes.
Is a response, not a reaction. The subconscious is reactionary. It's fear-based. It's dualistic. Time is linear. Time isn't linear. Newsflash. It only is in three-dimensional consciousness. So what is it that I am creating right now? What can I create with this? Maybe sometimes it's a pile of shit. But what can I still create with this pile of shit? What can I create in my reality that then will emanate that back out again? And I think that is, you are an amazing, amazing testament to, how we can change, we can shift. We don't have to be stuck into the same roles and models and paradigms, silent and with a stutter. We can become something more with a great, big, huge life. And I think for me, this is a perfect spot for us to end. And I am definitely going to ask you to come back on the show and talk about this a lot further in different aspects of it, because I am just absolutely thrilled and so grateful, Christine. Christine Farr, everybody. Thank you so much, love. You are an absolute gem, and I can't wait for us to talk again. Thanks, everybody, listening to Creating Life Consciously, and we will see you next week.